The sound of a backpack zipper failing echoed through Ethan Evans's cramped apartment as his 7-year-old daughter, Sophie, stared at him with wide, panicked eyes. This was the third time this month something had broken, and parent-teacher night at Westbrook Elementary was in exactly 47 minutes. "Dad, it's completely broken. All my stuff is going to fall out." Sophie's voice quivered as she held up the damaged backpack. Ethan ran his hand through his disheveled brown hair and took a deep breath. The construction company he worked for had cut his hours again, and the child support he received from his ex-wife was often late. The stack of bills on his kitchen counter seemed to grow taller every day, mocking his efforts to provide a stable life for his daughter. "Let me see, sweetie," he said calmly, kneeling to examine the broken zipper. "I think I can fix this." He reached for the duct tape on the counter, the universal solution to most household problems in the Evans apartment. "Not tape again," Sophie groaned, her small shoulders slumping. "Mia has a sparkly unicorn backpack. Everyone will laugh at me." Ethan felt the familiar pang in his chest. "This is just temporary, Soph. I promise we'll get you a new one soon." The words felt hollow even as he spoke them. New backpacks weren't in the budget this month, not with the electricity bill overdue and winter approaching. After a quick but thorough duct tape repair job, they hurried down to Ethan's 12-year-old Honda Civic, which protested with a concerning rattle before finally starting on the third try. The drive to school was filled with Sophie's excited chatter about her science project and how her teacher, Miss Wilson, had given her a gold star for her drawing of the solar system. Ethan listened attentively, pushing away thoughts of the second job he'd applied for earlier that day. Being a single dad working construction already meant early mornings and tired evenings, but Sophie's needs came first. Always had, always would. The school parking lot was packed with vehicles that made his Civic look like it belonged in a junkyard. Gleaming SUVs and luxury sedans lined the spaces. Ethan found a spot at the far end of the lot, next to a dented minivan that made him feel slightly better about his own transportation situation. "Now remember," he said as they walked toward the brightly lit school building, "after we talk to Miss Wilson, we need to head straight home. I have to be up at 5 tomorrow for work. But Dad, can we please look at the art room? I want to show you my clay pot." Ethan checked his watch. An extra 15 minutes wouldn't kill him. "All right, Picasso, art room it is." Sophie beamed up at him, her smile warming his heart in a way nothing else could. He'd work 3 jobs if needed just to keep that smile on her face. The hallways of Westbrook Elementary buzzed with activity. Parents in business attire chatted in small groups, while children dragged them from classroom to classroom. Ethan tugged self-consciously at his faded flannel shirt, wishing he'd had time to change out of his work jeans after finishing his shift. Miss Wilson's classroom was already crowded when they arrived. The energetic young teacher waved them over, her genuine smile putting Ethan at ease as she began discussing Sophie's progress. "Sophie is absolutely thriving in science and reading," Miss Wilson said. "She has such a creative mind, and she's always eager to help her classmates." Pride swelled in Ethan's chest. Despite the financial struggles, despite the cramped apartment and second-hand clothes, Sophie was flourishing. He must be doing something right. "However, Miss Wilson continued, lowering her voice slightly, "I've noticed she seems a bit hesitant about the upcoming field trip to the Science Museum." Ethan's stomach tightened. The permission slip for that trip was still sitting on his counter at home, the $30 fee feeling like $300 in his current situation. He'd been putting off telling Sophie they might have to skip this one. "We're still figuring out our schedule," he said vaguely, feeling heat rise to his cheeks. Miss Wilson nodded, her expression kind. "Well, there are scholarship opportunities available." "I'd be happy to submit Sophie's name. That won't be necessary," came a voice from behind them. "I've actually sponsored the entire class for this trip." Ethan turned to find himself face to face with the most striking woman he'd ever seen. She wore a simple black blazer over a white blouse, her dark hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders. Her eyes, a clear hazel, met his with unexpected warmth. "I don't believe we've met," she said, extending her hand. "Lily Lawrence, My son Oliver is in class with Sophie. Ethan shook her hand, suddenly very aware of his calloused palm against her smooth skin. Ethan Evans, Sophie's dad. Miss Wilson beamed. Miss Lawrence has generously covered the cost for all students to attend the museum, plus lunch and the planetarium show. That's incredibly generous, Ethan said, studying Lily's face. There was something remarkably down-to-earth about her, despite the subtle diamond earrings catching the fluorescent lights. Oliver talks about Sophie all the time, Lily said. Apparently she helped him understand fractions when he was struggling. I figured sponsoring a field trip was the least I could do to thank the class genius. Sophie, who had been examining the classroom hamster, spun around at the compliment. Really, Oliver said that. He absolutely did, Lily confirmed with a gentle smile. He says you're the smartest kid in class. Ethan watched as his daughter's chest puffed up with pride. He mouthed a silent thank you to Lily, who responded with a slight nod after finishing with Miss Wilson. Ethan and Sophie headed to the art room as promised. To his surprise, Lily and a small boy with glasses, presumably Oliver, fell into step beside them. We're art room bound too, Lily explained. Oliver won't stop talking about his clay dinosaur. It's a T-Rex, the boy clarified seriously, adjusting his glasses. I made the teeth extra pointy. Sophie immediately engaged Oliver in animated conversation about dinosaurs and extinction theories, leaving the adults to follow behind. Your daughter is remarkable, Lily said quietly. Oliver struggled to make friends when we moved here last month. Sophie was the first kid to sit with him at lunch. She's got a big heart, Ethan replied, unable to keep the pride from his voice. Sometimes I think she's raising me instead of the other way around. Lily laughed, the sound genuine and unguarded. I know exactly what you mean. Single parenting is like trying to build a plane while you're flying it. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You're a single parent too, she nodded. Divorced 3 years ago. Oliver's dad lives in Europe now, so it's just us most of the time. As they watched their children excitedly show off their art projects, Ethan felt a surprising connection with this woman. Despite her obvious wealth, he'd noticed the luxury watch on her wrist, and the designer shoes she spoke with none of the condescension he often encountered from the more affluent parents at school. Would you and Sophie like to join us for ice cream? Lily asked suddenly. There's a place down the street that Oliver won't stop raving about, and I promised him we'd go after parent night. Ethan hesitated, thinking of his early morning shift. I should probably get Sophie home. Please, Dad, Sophie had clearly overheard. Oliver says they have bubblegum ice cream with real bubblegum pieces. One look at his daughter's hopeful face crumbled his resistance. All right, but just a quick trip. The ice cream parlor was a colorful, retro establishment with neon signs and vinyl booths. The children settled into a booth together, immediately continuing their intense discussion about whether pterodactyls should count as dinosaurs. I haven't seen Sophie this animated in a while, Ethan admitted as he and Lily stood at the counter ordering. She's usually pretty shy around new kids. Oliver too, Lily replied. I was beginning to worry about him. We've moved around a lot for my work and it takes a toll. What do you do? Ethan asked, genuinely curious. Lily seemed to hesitate for a fraction of a second. I run a tech company. We develop educational software for children with learning differences. That sounds fascinating, Ethan said, impressed. And important work. It is, she agreed, her eyes lighting up. My brother has dyslexia, and watching him struggle through school inspired me to look for better solutions. What about you? Construction, he said simply. Nothing as impressive as educational software, but I enjoy building things. They carried the ice cream to the table, where Sophie and Oliver were now engaged in a friendly debate about the best superhero. Ethan couldn't help but notice how easily Lily interacted with Sophie, asking thoughtful questions and listening intently to her answers. There was no forced enthusiasm or talking down to her, just genuine interest. As the evening wore on, Ethan found himself relaxing in Lily's company, sharing stories about Sophie's toddler years and listening to Lily's tales of Oliver's obsession with space exploration. Time slipped away until Ethan glanced at his watch and realized it was nearly 9 o'clock. We really need to get going, he said reluctantly. 5 a.m. comes pretty early. Of course, Lily said, reaching for her purse. This was lovely. Before Ethan could object, she had paid for everyone's ice cream. He opened his mouth to protest, but she cut him off with a gentle smile. You can get it next time, she said, as if there would definitely be a next time. As they walked to the parking lot, the children ran ahead, still chattering excitedly. Sophie mentioned you both might come to the park on Saturday, Lily said. Oliver and I usually go around noon. Maybe we'll see you there. Ethan found himself nodding before he could overthink it. We'll be there. Sophie would love that. They reached his Honda, which looked even more pitiful next to Lily's sleek Audi. If she noticed the contrast, she gave no indication. See you Saturday, Ethan Evans, she said with a small wave, before guiding Oliver toward their car. On the drive home, Sophie couldn't stop talking about Oliver and their plans for Saturday. He has all the Minecraft Legos, Dad, and his mom knows how to code real computer games. Isn't that cool? Very cool, Ethan agreed, his mind still on Lily's warm smile and the unexpected connection he'd felt. Saturday arrived with perfect fall weather, crisp air and golden sunshine filtering through trees beginning to change color. Ethan and Sophie arrived at the park precisely at noon, Sophie clutching her favorite frisbee and practically vibrating with excitement. They spotted Lily and Oliver near the duck pond, a picnic basket set out on a red checkered blanket. Oliver waved enthusiastically when he saw Sophie, who raced ahead to greet her friend. I was hoping you'd come, Lily said as Ethan approached. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair tied back in a ponytail that made her look younger, more relaxed. Sophie talked about nothing else all week, Ethan admitted. I think Oliver's made quite the impression. The feeling is mutual, Lily laughed, gesturing to the picnic spread. I might have gone overboard with lunch. Oliver insisted we needed 3 types of sandwiches because he wasn't sure what Sophie would like. Ethan's heart warmed at the thoughtfulness. You didn't have to do all this. I wanted to, she said simply. Besides, cooking relaxes me. Corporate boardrooms can be stressful. The afternoon unfolded in a haze of pleasant conversation, frisbee games, and duck feeding. Ethan found himself opening up to Lily about his struggles since his divorce 3 years ago, the financial hardships, the challenges of balancing work with parenting, the constant fear that he wasn't doing enough for Sophie. You're doing an amazing job, Lily told him earnestly. Sophie is kind, intelligent, and clearly adores you. That doesn't happen by accident. Her words settled something in Ethan's chest that had been restless for a very long time. They exchanged phone numbers before parting ways, and that evening, Lily texted him a photo of Oliver showing Sophie his dinosaur collection that she'd snapped during their playdate. The simple message underneath read, "They're already plotting their next adventure. I think we're in trouble." Over the next few weeks, what began as children's playdates evolved into family outings. Lily and Oliver joined them for pizza nights at Ethan's apartment, never commenting on the mismatched furniture or the water stain on the ceiling that the landlord had promised to fix months ago. In turn, Ethan and Sophie visited Lily's home, a surprising modern house that, while spacious and beautifully designed, wasn't the mansion Ethan had half expected. Lily's success became more apparent through small details, rather than ostentatious displays. The original artwork on her walls, the state-of-the-art home office, the casual mention of her recent business trip to Tokyo. But she never flaunted her wealth, or made Ethan feel less than for his more modest circumstances. One evening in late October, after the children had fallen asleep during a movie night at Lily's house, she and Ethan sat on her back porch, sharing a bottle of wine under the stars. "Can I ask you something personal?" Lily said, her voice soft in the darkness. "Of course," Ethan replied, feeling comfortable in her presence in a way he hadn't with anyone in years. "Why haven't you dated since your divorce? Sophie mentioned you've never brought anyone home before us." Ethan considered the question, watching the wind rustle through the trees at the edge of Lily's property. Honestly, it never seemed worth the complication. Between work and Sophie, there wasn't much time, and the idea of bringing someone new into our lives, someone who might not stick around. He shrugged. "Sophie's been through enough change." Lily nodded thoughtfully. I understand that. After my divorce, I threw myself into work. It was easier than risking another relationship. Plus, most men I met either wanted access to my company or were intimidated by my success. Their loss, Ethan said sincerely. Lily turned to him, her expression suddenly vulnerable. What about you? Does my success intimidate you? Ethan met her gaze directly. No, it impresses me. There's a difference. Something shifted between them in that moment, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been building for weeks. When Lily leaned forward and kissed him, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Their relationship developed with the same easy rhythm as their friendship had. Lily never tried to solve Ethan's financial problems with her wealth, understanding his pride and independence. Instead, she found subtle ways to ease burdens, organizing potluck dinners, where she accidentally made too much food that Ethan and Sophie could take home, or finding free community events for their family outings. In turn, Ethan brought warmth and stability to Lily's life. He built Oliver a treehouse in Lily's backyard, taught Lily how to fix her leaking kitchen faucet, and brought a comfortable domesticity that her success had never provided. The children, thrilled with the developing relationship, became inseparable. Sophie blossomed under Oliver's friendship and Lily's gentle mentorship, while Oliver found in Ethan the male role model he'd been missing since his father moved abroad. But their growing happiness was tested in December, when Ethan's construction company announced layoffs due to seasonal slowdown. Despite his seniority, Ethan found himself without work just as the holiday season approached. The timing couldn't have been worse. He'd been saving for months to give Sophie a special Christmas, and now even paying January's rent seemed doubtful. Pride kept him from immediately telling Lily about the layoff. Instead, he threw himself into job hunting, spending days submitting applications and making calls while Sophie was at school. But as the weeks passed with no promising leads, the strain began to show. Is everything okay? Lily asked one evening after the kids had gone to bed. They were decorating her Christmas tree, but Ethan's usual enthusiasm was noticeably absent. You've seemed distracted lately. Ethan sighed, setting down the ornament he'd been holding. He couldn't hide it anymore. I lost my job 3 weeks ago. The company had to cut back for winter. Lily's expression softened with understanding rather than pity. Why didn't you tell me? I thought I'd find something else quickly, he admitted. I didn't want you to worry or think less of you. She finished gently. He nodded, embarrassed. Ethan Evans, she said, taking his hands in hers. In the months I've known you, I've seen you work harder than anyone I know to provide for Sophie. A temporary setback doesn't change who you are. Her acceptance loosened something in his chest. I'm worried about Christmas, he confessed. Sophie's been through so much, and I promised her things would be different this year. Lily was quiet for a moment, thinking, I have an idea, but I need you to hear me out before you say no. She outlined her proposal, a job opening at her company for a project manager overseeing the construction of their new educational labs. The position required someone who understood building, could coordinate contractors, and could translate between the construction teams and the software developers. I wasn't going to mention it because I didn't want you to think I was interfering, she explained. But you're perfectly qualified, Ethan. The fact that I know you personally is just a bonus. Ethan hesitated. I don't have experience in the tech industry. You don't need it. You understand construction, you're organized, and you're excellent with people. The tech part you can learn. She squeezed his hand. Just promise you'll think about it. After careful consideration and a formal interview with Lily's HR team and board members, during which Lily recused herself from the decision-making process, Ethan accepted the position. The salary was nearly double what he'd made in construction, with benefits that would provide security for Sophie he'd only dreamed of before. As Christmas approached, their two small families merged their traditions. They baked cookies using Sophie's grandmother's recipe, hung stockings that Oliver had decorated with fabric paint, and built a gingerbread house that looked more like an architectural disaster than a seasonal decoration. On Christmas Eve, after the children had finally gone to sleep in anticipation of Santa's arrival, Lily and Ethan sat together by the fireplace in her living room. I have something for you, Lily said, handing him a small wrapped package. Inside was a simple silver key on a leather keychain that Sophie and Oliver had clearly made, decorated with beads and stamped with the words "Our Family." Ethan looked at her questioningly. "It's a key to this house," Lily explained, suddenly nervous. "I know it's only been a few months, but Oliver and I have been talking, and we'd like you and Sophie to move in with us. Not because of your financial situation," she added quickly, "but because this house feels more like a home when you're both in it." Ethan was momentarily speechless, overwhelmed by the gesture. "You don't have to answer right away," Lily continued. "I know it's a big decision, especially for Sophie. Take all the time you need to think about it." "I don't need time," Ethan said, finding his voice. "This feels right." "It has from the beginning." He pulled out a small box from his pocket that he'd been saving for the right moment. "Actually, I have something for you too." The ring inside wasn't expensive, it was silver rather than platinum, with a modest stone, but he'd saved for it from his first paycheck at the new job, determined to give Lily something that came solely from his own efforts. "I'm not proposing yet," he clarified as Lily's eyes widened. "That deserves more planning and probably the kids' involvement, but this is a promise ring, a promise that I'm all in wherever this journey takes us." Tears filled Lily's eyes as she slipped the ring onto her right hand. "It's beautiful, and yes, I'm all in too." Christmas morning dawned with excited children racing downstairs to discover stockings filled to the brim and presents spilling out from under the tree. But the real gift, Ethan reflected as he watched Sophie and Oliver excitedly showing each other their new treasures, was the family they were building together. Moving in together in January proved surprisingly smooth. The children had already established a comfortable rapport, and with separate bedrooms and plenty of shared space, the transition felt natural rather than forced. Ethan insisted on contributing financially now that he could afford to by covering groceries and utilities, maintaining his independence while embracing their partnership. By spring, they had settled into a family rhythm that felt like it had always existed. Weekend breakfasts featured Ethan's famous pancakes. School nights found all four of them around the dinner table sharing stories from their day. And holidays became rich with new traditions that honored both families' pasts while creating something uniquely their own. On a warm evening in May, exactly 1 year after they'd first met at parent-teacher night, Ethan enlisted Sophie and Oliver's help for a proper proposal. They transformed the backyard into a twinkling wonderland with string lights and candles, and when Lily returned from a business trip, both children led her outside blindfolded. "What is going on?" she laughed as they carefully guided her through the back door. When they removed the blindfold, she found Ethan kneeling in the center of the yard, surrounded by photos documenting their year together: ice cream outings, park adventures, holiday celebrations, and quiet moments at home. "Lily Lawrence," he said, his voice steady despite his racing heart, "this past year has shown me what family truly means. It's not about perfect circumstances or having everything figured out. It's about facing life's challenges together and celebrating its joys side by side." Sophie and Oliver stood nearby, holding a banner they'd painted that read, "Say Yes," with multicolored handprints decorating the edges. "With the enthusiastic approval of our two favorite people," Ethan continued, gesturing toward the grinning children, "I'm asking if you'll marry me and make official what we already know, that we're meant to be a family." Tears streamed down Lily's face as she nodded, too overcome for words. When she finally found her voice, she whispered, "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The children erupted in cheers, rushing forward to join in a group hug that nearly toppled all four of them onto the grass. Later that evening, after a celebratory dinner and putting the excited children to bed with promises that yes, they could both participate in the wedding, Ethan and Lily sat on the porch swing where they'd shared their first kiss. "If someone had told me a year ago that a parent-teacher night would change my life, I never would have believed them," Ethan said, his arm around Lily's shoulders. "I remember seeing you that night," Lily admitted. "You were so focused on Sophie, hanging on every word her teacher said. I knew before we even spoke that you were someone special, and I thought you were just another parent," Ethan laughed. Little did I know you were a tech mogul who would turn my world upside down. For the better, I hope, she teased. Infinitely better, he confirmed, kissing her softly. Though I maintain that my duct tape skills are still superior to your coding abilities. A claim we'll have to test empirically, she countered with a grin. They married that summer in a backyard ceremony with Sophie as flower girl and Oliver as ring bearer. The celebration was intimate and joyful, focusing on the blending of their families rather than extravagance. For their honeymoon, they took the children on a family trip to Disney World. Lily's practical wealth, combining perfectly with Ethan's hands-on parenting to create a vacation that was both magical and grounded. As the years passed, their family grew stronger. Ethan thrived in his role at Lily's company, eventually heading an entire division focused on creating accessible learning spaces in underserved communities. Lily continued innovating in educational technology, with Ethan's practical perspective influencing her designs in ways that made them more effective in real-world classrooms. Sophie and Oliver became not just step-siblings but best friends, supporting each other through academic challenges, first crushes, and the inevitable bumps of adolescence. And 2 years after the wedding, they welcomed a baby brother, Max, who completed their family circle. On evenings when all 3 children were finally asleep, Ethan and Lily would often reminisce about that first parent-teacher night, how a broken backpack zipper and a generous field trip donation had set in motion the greatest adventure of their lives. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't met that night?" Lily asked once, as they sorted through the day's mail at the kitchen island. Ethan considered the question, thinking of the struggles that had preceded their meeting and the joy that had followed. "I think we would have found each other eventually," he decided. "Some connections are just meant to be." "Is that the romantic or the pragmatist talking?" she teased. "Both," he replied, pulling her close. "The romantic believes in destiny. But the pragmatist knows that what makes this work isn't fate, it's the choice we make every day to build this life together." Lily smiled up at him, the same warm smile that had first caught his attention among the classroom chaos of parent night. "Best choice I ever made." "Mine too," he whispered against her lips. "Without a doubt." And in a home filled with evidence of both struggle and success, they continued writing their story, not one of a millionaire and a struggling dad, but of 2 people who had found in each other exactly what they needed: a partner, a co-parent, and a love that made them both richer than either could have imagined.